Namaste and welcome to HinduLounge. This is HinduLounge. HinduLounge is brought to you by HinduPact. HinduPact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, VHPA, on contemporary American Hindu issues. With me, as always, is Sudha Jagannathan, and she is a very vocal, very articulate spokesperson for Hindu causes, a great advocate for Hindu causes. So, Sudha, welcome to HinduLounge.
Yeah, thank you.
We have
Namaste to
got
everybody.
so many rave reviews for all the great contribution you're making through Hindu Launch. People are really impressed with the way you articulate the issues. And let's dive into it. Our topic for the day. This week, we are going to talk about the campuses in America are in a turmoil. They have all kinds of things that are going on related to the Palestine and the Israel. And it all started with the Hamas terrorists essentially going into the Israeli or Jewish settlements in Israel and kidnapping over 1,200 people. And then Israel, as any country would, reacted to that. And there's a war that is going on between Hamas and Israel. We talked last week a little bit about it from a perspective of one of the Hindu activists who went to a city council meeting and kind of see how brainwashed she is, that she was actually calling out for their murders. But there are other brainwashed Hindus in America who are taking the side of the terrorists. And I thought, why not we talk about this? Is your idea? You said, why don't we talk about the the all the campus turmoils and how the Hindu youth are participating in these. Let's talk through this because this connects really well with the Hindu youth issue that we have been talking about for last, I guess, a couple of weeks. Last week it was Yudhi Patel. This week it is about youth and youth who are on campuses and showing their solidarity with Hamas. Before we get started, we can. Why don't you recap some of the discussion we had last week, and then I can go a little bit through the history of student movement, some of these major student movements around the world, and then we can dive into this particular campus turmoil.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. This is a good topic because it's so relevant and it impacts the Hindu Americans, even though we are not Palestinians or Israelis. It is really coming into our homes because our kids in college are impacted. And what impacts them also affects the parents and the families. Last week, we talked about Riddhi Patel, who, as an activist for the pro Palestinian cause, uh, did a really terrible job going to the Bakersfield City Council and threatening city officials. She's under arrest and she's had to put up bail. And what happened, it was that she lost her job. Anyway, she was making no money there, but she lost her job and the Palestinian organizations came and disassociated from her. So, what exactly did she get out of all of this? And we did speak about misguided Hindu youth. And a couple of the ideas we talked about was how our children are sort of getting drawn into this what we said, tribal affiliation, meaning an eagerness to join a clique, a social justice kind of a cause. And then they are not thinking through the ideological indoctrination or radicalization aspect of anything because they're carried away by the momentum, by the passion, which of course a young teenage and early 20 kid is going to have a very high level of hormones. So it's causing problems for them. And I think we need to be very cognizant of what is already happened, what is happening to our children in this current conflict, global conflict, and figure out some ways to build some opportunities for our kids to engage in social justice causes that are extremely meaningful in today's life. And maybe they can make an impact to change a terrible situation into a good situation. But that doesn't mean you break the rules on university campuses or at work. Remember, Google fired right now 50 employees. Many of them might be on this work visas. They're never going to get an opportunity to live and work in the United States because I think companies and or universities need to stand up and say, hey, we are willing to listen to you. We will give you the opportunity to protest, but you cannot break the rules and regulations that we have. And I think that is where we are seeing some problems. And the whole point of the left liberal movement in the universities, I think the pendulum has to swing into to the center. And some of this, I'm hoping, will cause that pendulum to swing to the center. Neither extreme left or right is the right way for the country. We need to have a centrist view. Hopefully that happens. And the faculty have lost their purpose, I would say, especially the left socialist leaning faculty. They need to understand what is their job in enlightening and educating our children so they become good citizens. Are these protesters, can we expect them to be good citizens? Would we hire them if they're a lawyer or a professor or something? How would we look at these people? It's kind of a dangerous situation. We are I'm so totally worried and really, really concerned about what is happening. So, as a Hindu, what do we do? These folks seem to have a very, very misunderstanding or a misunderstood view of the world and the loss of an idea of dharma. What is the dharma that would make you do the right thing or pick the right choice in these things? So I think we summarized a lot of this last time. We also said that Hindu parents who come here as immigrants cannot be complacent. You need to know what is happening in this world here where your children live and they grow up. You need to have discussions of these topics and you need to inculcate a sense of citizenship. Being a civically engaged family, that is extremely important. That's what I would say about last week and how that follows through and continues to this week.
Perfect. Let me walk through some of the background of the student movement in America, if you will. This is the history of the student movement in America. We'd already looked at some of the student movements of the past. One of the significant student movement of the past was the Greensboro sit-in 1960. Now, this is a really worthy cause. That you remember the era where there was segregation in America, and there were four students who sat at the Woolworths where there were segregated counters, and if you had no counters, there were no segregated counters, then there would be the African Americans would be refused service. So they went to Woolworths, which was a major store at one time, which is no longer in business, and they sat in the cafeteria of Woolworth in the department store, and they asked for service, and they were refused, and they were refused this, so they were denied service, they were refused service, and these students said they would not leave. And the next thing, there were 300 students protesting at Woolworths, and then the sit-in movement, the protest movement started across America in the college towns, and it eventually ended up in desegregation in libraries, hotels, other businesses, including the Greensboro Woolworth, a very successful culmination of a significant student movement in America happened in 1960. And that was not the only incident. There were a whole bunch of similar incidents. There was an incident at Ole Miss where Ole Miss got desegregated when James Meredith was the first African American student got admission over there. But this was one of the major student movements in American history. The next student movement in American history was the Kent State University. Now, Kent State University, for those who are not familiar with it, when U.S. invaded Cambodia as part of the Vietnam War, they, there was a student protest that broke out at the Kent State University. And the university officials tried to ban the scheduled protest, but 3,000 showed up. And Kent State University is in Ohio. So Ohio National Guard were sent, and they were armed with all the weapons and all that. They they fired on the students who were protesting. Four students were killed, several, about nine were injured, I believe, and that eventually that kind of mushroomed into or grew into rather the Vietnam protest movement in America against the Vietnam War, and resulted in eventually America pulling out the Vietnam War. So again, a successful student movement. There is another one from India. For those who can jog back memory, if they were still in India or old enough to remember this, was in 1974. There was a significant movement in India, a student movement in India called Nav Nirman Andolan. It started, Jayaprakash Narayan took a lead in it, and I know someone personally who was one of the leaders of that movement, now lives in UK. He and Jayaprakash Narayan led this movement. This was against middle class people protesting the economic condition, and also corruption in the public life. And this movement just grew and grew and grew. It went from Gujarat, then eventually Bihar, and this is one of the reasons this successful movement. The governments fell, all kinds of things happened. Eventually, it was this Navnirman Andolan and the Lok Jagran, or the awakening that happened among the people, and the court cases on corruption related, co-election corruption related cases against Indira Gandhi. Both of that combined into India having emergency rule. For people who remember, there was a suspension of democracy in India for about 2.5 years. And that was the result of this Navnirman Andolan. And then after that, for the first time in history, a non-Congress government was formed in India. And a lot of things that you see today in Indian politics, you can actually trace back to the Navnirman Andolan, Navnirman movement, or Reconstruction movement. And the last one I would point out is not so successful a student movement, and that was the Tiananmen Square, where the students had agitated and against the high inflation, corruption in the government in China. And this is an iconic picture where a student stands up to the a column of tanks. Nobody knows whatever happened to that student, but this was a movement that was enough threatening to the Chinese government that eventually it was brutally put down. Nothing changed in China after this particular movement, but it is an example of one of the movements where there was a significant student uprising, if you will.
Yeah. I think these are all great examples, but
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, no, please go ahead. I was just going to now pivot to the pro-Palestinian campus protests that are currently going on. But if you have comments about the past student movements, please go ahead.
A lot of the examples you showed, Ajay, was where injustice is happening within countries, within the US, in India, and in China. And in the democracies like India and the United States, those student movements did impact a positive outcome. Of course, it's not always perfect, but the students engaging in these things and asking for better conditions and still getting out of the war, etc., are for their own country, right? The good of their own. And then you talked about Cambodia too. That was America's involvement in a foreign war. And so now leading up to the pro-Palestinian protests, take it on, show us the slides and we can talk about it. So I just wanted to do the transition. Internal protests to improve conditions within a country or to protest your country's involvement in a foreign war, which America has embarked on many, many times. And then now America is very, very careful about to be go do things. Right? Some to the
Yeah.
point of they don't do it even when maybe justified. But yeah,
No,
it,
no,
it-
excellent points. Let's look at some of the movement. What are some of the parameters of the current pro-Palestinian campus protests? The first one, you can see that the protests are happening across the country, not as much in the middle part of the country, but especially on the two coasts, as you would expect, because they're much more liberal college campuses. You can see where the pro-Palestinian protests are happening. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The other thing I would say is that the campuses are really under siege. There's one example of Cal Poly Humboldt campus where they've actually occupied, and the campus has been shut down. And they've named one of the
yeah,
building as Intifada Hall.
I know. It's like a takeover. I think some what this particular example, the Cal Poly, what we see is a completely chaotic. It's gone beyond a protest. It's gone beyond a protest and it's become extremely violent here. And I think that is what is concerning everyday Americans who look at all of this. You look at your bridges being blocked, your highway to Chicago airport or the SeaTech in Seattle blocked. I mean, it really starts to impact everyday life. This is beyond actually college campuses. So this one is really, really scary. The only saving grace is that schools are closing now. And so
Yeah.
maybe it can
Well, I mean,
contain some of the
from the student perspective, they're paying tuition to have in-person education, and now they're not able to get this in-person education. I mean, so in some ways the ordinary students are cheated out of a good education because they are being deprived of their of the campus life. They're not able to
Yeah.
enter campus anymore because a few, for lack of better words, aggressive protesters are preventing classes. I don't think the numbers are large, and let me show you some more data, and then we can talk about it, because it is more than just, is it real, who is protesting? I mean, that I think it is worth looking at who are the people who are protesting. Let's look at this. First, what are the demands? They basically are saying that, and I'll put ourselves here so you can see the full slide. One of the demands is that Israel must be eliminated. They are saying that from river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which means that it will be entire area of that area of Middle East will be Palestine, and there's no place for Israel. So eliminate the state of Israel. And the second thing they're saying is that they want to globalize intifada. And remember, these are some of the same words that are used in India, in Kashmir, and other places. So when you say globalize, and this is something that the students from India who are protesting in in cahoots with the Palestinian protesters must realize that at some point this is a movement that is a global movement, and India is not going to be immune from the globalized intifada.
We have already seen that universities like Oberlin and a few others dragging India Hindus into this, right? The professor at UCLA, his name is Sharia professor, law professor, Khaled Abu El Fadil. In an off-site talk, he said the Indians are fighting for the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, and they are jumping up in joy by killing the Palestinian women because it is practice for the Hindus to go do the same thing in Kashmir. Can you imagine that? And because he did not say it on campus, the university said, well, we can't do anything about him. But if this man, this professor is a Syrian anti Semite and a Hindu phobe. And I wrote to the university and said, you have to condemn Hinduphobia from this guy. If you have condemned his anti Semitism, you have to condemn Hinduphobia. They haven't done it.
Well, and then I think the answer they give, that's on not done on campus, is a bogus answer. If the same professor had spoken about any of the favorite issues that university cared about, that the left cared about, that professor would have been suspended or relieved of his professorial duties. It is just because it was a it is a Hindu hate, Hindu attack, and Hindus generally are not as aggressive in defending themselves. A university can get away with it. And then this is also something that is against Title IV. This is anti-Jewish, this particular movement is not just against Israel, but it's also against American Jews, as it is against anti-Hindus in some places where people have made explicit statements. So it's anti-Hindu as well. These are the universities that are under the Department of Education investigation for discrimination, and Title IV is the one that protects the
Yes,
equal
religious.
rights and non-discrimination policies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is now the next question is like, who is behind all of this, right? And if you look at let me make this a little bigger so everyone can see this. But this is the two articles, one from Wall Street Journal and one from the Sunday Guardian. And the Sunday Guardian article says that it's a toxic mix of the influx of Qatari and Chinese funding on one hand and ideological indoctrination on the other hand. And if you look at that article, it says that if you it makes a similar statement that this is a movement. It says Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and others are grooming activists in the US and across the West. Let me restate this because I cannot understate this particular sentence. Wall Street Journal, in an op-ed piece, says that Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis and the others are grooming activists in the US and across the West.
Mhm.
Now tell me, how is the Indian interest or Hindu interest in this particular protest?
Look at that flag. It says free Palestine or else. That's a clear threat. So I agree that look at the people behind it. And the students at Columbia banging on the barricades said, we are Hamas. We love Hamas. We love your rockets.
And
I mean,
Hamas is a
I
designated terrorist organization, and they fire barrage of missiles against Israel, hundreds and
Israel.
hundreds of them at a time.
Yes, and they're calling for the Hamas, the fighter group, to continue what their assault on Israel. So these people, when they say free Palestine, are not interested in a peaceful settlement at all. Because there was a news reporter who went and spoke to this Palestinian protester with a keffiyeh cover and said, "What about the hostages held?" And she said, "Well, I am here to talk about the Palestinians who have died." And the journalist asked again and again, "What about the hostages?" That protester would not address that question at all. This kind of a line in the sand drawn. And then I kind of feel America cannot sit back and take this lightly. This is a serious, serious issue.
Yeah,
And if the
but
country
there's
doesn't
more, right?
tackle it right now, yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And here is more. These are not
yeah,
even, these are paid professionals. This
yeah,
is a really instructive slide, news item that again, it is from a Wall Street Journal. And it says that some anti Israel protesters are paid. Rockefeller and Soros grants are subsidizing those who disrupt college campuses. So they're actually people getting paid to do this. That $2,880 to $3,360 for a
yeah.
3-month term, roughly 8 hours a week, and work could include aiding campaigns that demand federal or state politicians to cut US military, financial, or diplomatic ties. This is undermining American, not just educational system, but American security.
Security.
And this is being tolerated on campus. I was a student activist in India. Okay, I have done my fair share of student activism, but as an American citizen, I can tell you that I do not condone anyone, any student activist who goes against the interest of America. This is clearly paid protesters, and this is also reminiscent of some of the protests that took place in India in farmers' agitation and
And
CAA
the
protests and all that stuff,
CIA.
where the
Yeah,
protesters were paid.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. It's the same blueprint. And the point is that if they don't like American foreign policy, if you're an American citizen, you have a great option. Go vote and choose somebody else. But if you are an international person here, maybe taking this fight in the wrong country. Go back to your own country and do it. I
Yeah,
mean, you have these choices, but then it's so destructive here. In every campus, 50 universities are now struggling with
yeah.
these protests.
Most of them, as this slide tells you, and again, this is an article from ABC News, and it says that
Yeah,
most of the protesters arrested in Ohio State University camp, or rather on Ohio State University campus, are not even students. They're not even affiliated with the school, and they're trying to shut down the school.
yeah.
So these are
So
not just the paid student protesters, but the paid just activists, or
outsiders.
not in activists, the
Yeah,
paid workers of
yeah,
some kind who are trying to shut down the campuses.
yes, yeah. Yeah, like I said, this is a very, very toxic mix of passion, justice, and all mixed in with lots and lots of foreign money and like the Rockefeller Brothers Fund and the Soros Fund. It is to undermine democracy and democratic institutions.
I mean, if there was
So,
real meddling in the election or meddling in the national security, this would be one.
yes,
See how radical jihadist linked groups, again, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, are spreading the cancer of anti Semitism across the campus. A news item from a National Review.
mhm,
The slogans, they're chanting death to America. This is the slogan that came out of Iran during Iranian Revolution, as
yes,
they call it, Iranian Revolution. And it was a slogan that was given by Ayatollah Khomeini.
yeah,
And nobody ever thought that at University of Michigan and in New York City, the students will be shouting, American students
yeah,
would be shouting, death to America.
yeah, yeah,
How can you be in America, distribute the pamphlets that say death to America, and say that, well, I'm protected by, maybe there's freedom of speech, and this is covered under the First Amendment. But would any rational American who is reaping all the benefits of the democracy that America offers be saying death to America.
No, that is why this has to be addressed very, very soon and very, very strongly by the Department of Education, the university administrations, the attorney general. So I saw a little bit of a news about why aren't the attorneys generals of these different states involved? Because this has crossed the lines of all sorts of freedoms that people have in this country. This has gone beyond that, and especially foreign terrorist groups getting involved here. See, these are all terrorists from countries that don't have democracies and coming in
Yes,
here to meddle with democracy. Somewhere we have lost touch with, or our kids have lost touch with, what exactly are your values in this country, right?
yeah,
What do you stand for? And I kind of feel that as immigrants, we come, we get our citizenship, we go get our citizenship in the federal building. We have to take an oath and pass an exam. I kind
yeah.
of feel like we should have that happen to all of our own kids, second, third generation, a reaffirmation of who you are and what you stand for and why you are in this country. Today's
Yeah,
world
no,
is simply
I
ending.
mean, something. I mean, this. I mean, again, I have utmost respect for the First Amendment, and I don't believe in having people having to go through the citizenship test or any of that, because that's a slippery
High
slope,
schools
and we
do
don't
that
want to
though.
go through that.
Some high schools require that kids to
Yeah,
kind
no,
of
so
review.
they require the test, but it's not a test for anyone to take in order to live in America or any of that. But it would not be a bad idea for people to just kind of do some introspection and say, am I kind of cutting the branch on which or a branch of the tree on which I am sitting?
Mhm.
Because am I doing things against my own self-interest? Because today there are the women who are calling for intifada, and they're calling for Hamas to win, and they're aligning with the Houthis, who are aligned with the Islamic State. And tomorrow they might be treated like the women were treated in Islamic State.
The
Is
Yazidi
that
women.
really what they want?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that I think a little bit of self introspection would go a long way. Self analysis of where you are on a given issue would go a long way, rather than emotionally just go on a campus and shout the slogans you don't understand.
But remember, we said the faculty, a lot of the faculty are part of the problem. The left leaning socialism. So America spent so much money and effort in containing communism and keeping it off off our borders. But
Yeah,
our campuses and many institutions have been taken over by the same socialists. How do we take it back? How does the country take it back? I'm just saying it's not that this is bad, that is bad. We need to be at the center. We need to really, really make sure we understand the values we stand for and not lose them, right?
absolutely. Let me go and show a couple of more slides. So this is the we talked about the slogan. Now let's look at, it's not just the, we just talked about not just Israel. They're sworn American on the other
Hmm.
side. So Hamas, and we talked about Hamas, Iran. They all
Yeah.
celebrated the anti-Gaza war protests taking place in the US. Why not? I mean, somebody is doing their work in America, so obviously they're going to be rejoicing, celebrating that, hey, they have succeeded in taking over the American campuses. Not American mainstream, but at least American campuses are now taken over, to the extent that there are universities that are shutting down and they're not having classes in person, and overall impacting America in a significant way. Uh, and here comes the role of Hindus for human rights. Maybe they're Hindus for Intifada now, because
Yeah.
they are out putting up their own tents and supporting. But I never saw them put up the tent again, asking for equal rights for Hindu girls that are getting abducted in Kashmir, in Pakistan, or Hindus from Kashmir who have been driven out. They never care for those, but here they are pitching the tent and advocating for Intifada.
Yeah. They're always against any legitimate Hindu phobic action. They stand and promote Hindu phobia. They
Oh, you mean
supported the
Hindu hate, not Hindu phobia.
Yeah, the Hindu hate. Of course, they supported dismantling Hinduism, supported the pro CAA campaigns, supported any kind of the activities like Oberlin University when they did that. It was one of their guys who went and talked about Holi against Hindutva. And that guy refused to answer some of the questions that the real Hindus went and asked him. He did not have any answers to why Holi is a problem. He could not answer. So these people, Hindus for human rights, they should remove the name Hindu, but they won't because it gives some legitimacy. And there's only one Hindu there, Sunita Vishwanathan. Everybody else is Muslim. And Sunita's husband, I think he's with the Jewish Voice for Peace, which is an anti-Semitic organization. It's like the two peas in a pod, right? And both are supporting these actions wholeheartedly. And I would say some of the young people are the ones in these tents with the sign Hindus for Palestine. It is, like I said, a really, really bad mix of identities being co opted. And I feel bad for the students who are caught up in
Yeah,
all
I
of
mean,
this.
this Hindus against their own self-interest, right? And then,
Yeah,
and we talked about this last week. I mean, there's this Indian students at Columbia shouting,
exactly.
Azadi
Yeah.
slogans for Palestine, and then they inserted Kashmir in there and all that kind of stuff. I mean, come on. I keep repeating this, but just if you're a college student, if you're in graduate school, I mean, you must have some capability of thinking.
You
Just
would think
think.
you would think so.
Think.
But Columbia University has a great journalism department, and the Columbia Journalism Review came out and said, "No, these slogans are not from Kashmir." Can you imagine that? So, what kind of legitimacy do these people have anymore?
A
Huh?
little, that's why I say a little thinking goes a long way. And I think people who are in graduate school, I mean, undergrad, okay, I can understand a freshman getting sucked into these protests because there's so much emotion and friends are doing it. All yeah, graduate student, come on. As a graduate student, use your God given intellect to think about it. And if you can't, then like, I don't know what to say. But
Yeah, I know.
so then comes this Indian origin woman, right? And she
Mm.
is at Princeton. She was born in India, but she grew up here in America. So she's not a foreigner. She is American and she has right to protest and all that. We all agree with that.
Is she
But she does
American?
not
Are
have
you
right.
sure?
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of news said she's Indian origin.
No, I mean Indian origin, but she may be American, but everyone has a right to protest in America, so
Yeah,
that's fine. But they don't have right to break laws, right? Nobody
yeah,
has right to break laws. Whether
yeah.
you're
Nobody.
American, you're a
Yeah,
student, whatever you don't have right to break laws. And
yeah,
there was a clear indication, a clearly stated policy that you cannot pitch tents at Princeton University. She still pitched tent, and now she's suspended. Now
yeah.
this is going to be I don't know what she's going to do. She may she may become a martyr for a cause, and all of a sudden there'll be Ivy League schools rushing to give her a faculty position for all, or she may be abandoned like Riddhi Patel was. But there are two choices. So we don't know what's going to happen to her. She's been suspended from coming to campus, but she's a PhD student. She has 5 years. I'm sure this suspension will be lifted and everything will be brushed over. But after all, it's Princeton. So
But I think it should not be just a free pass. I mean, that's my opinion. The school will have
sure.
to decide. It should not be a free pass and say, okay, you got suspended for 3 days. Now you're good. No, it has to be some level of. There has to be a price paid.
There has to be, but and I think they may, I know, but remember, you have yourself said right that these campuses have been taken over by people who are left leaning, especially the Ivy League schools. I would not be surprised if at in a month or two when this thing blows over, she will be
Back on campus.
forgiven and she will have yeah.
The
So
sad thing is, these are all very, very bright kids
yeah,
who have made a little bit of a mess of their lives.
and
And
come on, she is a graduate student
yeah,
at Ivy League school. So she obviously, as you said, she has the capability to think, but she has left it somewhere and she is just indulging in self-destructing activity, self-destructive activities on college campus.
yeah,
Let's look at the next last one. I think somebody brought up a casual discussion that, oh, if you're a foreign student, say if you're Indian or if you're from some other country like Fiji or Ghana, a lot of Hindu students come here to study. Do they have right to protest? Here is the so I did a little bit of looking around and I
yeah,
found a good resource from Cornell University. And it says that as the First Amendment applies to everyone who is in America. It doesn't matter if you're here legally, illegally, you're a student, not a student, you have absolute First Amendment right.
Mm.
But at the same time, if you get arrested and are charged and convicted while participating in process, that can affect your immigration status.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can write anything you want, you can say anything you want, but if you pitch a tent and then you get arrested for that, and then you get charged and then you get convicted, then you may have a problem. So for all the students from India, for all the Hindu students from other countries, hey, think before you go out and shout the slogans of Azadi on your
Yeah.
college campuses.
Well,
Uh,
that's why they were all wearing masks now, or covering their. They
uh,
don't want their faces show.
no,
But
yeah. The other thing I would say is that if you're really believe in your cause, be strong and really stand up for your cause. Don't wear a mask. You're gonna stand up for your cause. If you're really committed to your cause, remove your mask, stand up for your cause, and face the consequences. Because
exactly.
any
Don't
student
hide. Don't be
I
cowardly.
mean,
And if you believe,
any student activist who really believes in the cause has to say that, look, I am here. I stand for my beliefs, and
I'll take the
I'll take the
consequences.
consequences.
Yeah.
All right, so that was it. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next our three regularly scheduled topics?
Well, I mean, we have seen some messages from parents who have reached out and said, "My kid got tested." I just want to let all the parents out there know, the Hindu American parents, Hindu Canadian too. Watch out for your kids. Have conversations with them and tell them, protest peacefully. Don't break the law. And especially if you see things getting out of control, try to get out of that area, because you can be harmed. You can get arrested for just an idea that you support today, but you don't know whether you're going to be aligned tomorrow. It's all exciting, but it's not worth destroying your life. One kid was a medical student. Huh? So these are unfortunate, terrible, terrible choices that they are making.
Yeah.
And I want all parents to be aware of it and have conversations with their children, give them good advice. But don't scold them. Listen to them and understand they
You
want
don't
this all
alienate them forever.
time.
You've spoken like a true parent. Let me show the three of our regular segments that we do. If I
Yeah.
can bring that up, let me see if I can find them. Let's see. Find. So these are the we always do. We always do these three regular
Yeah.
segments. The first one is the Hindu Seva Act of the Week, and the Hindu Seva Act of the Week is once again the Ram Yatratra that is going on. And I just want to kind of impress upon people that as Hindu Mandir Empowerment Council and VHPA is visiting in person 851 temples. I believe we have already crossed close to 400 now, and taking the akshat and the prasad from the January 22nd Pran Pratishtha of Sri Ram Lalla temple. And it's just an amazing response to that. In every mandir, people are just lining up, people are eager to get the akshat and the prasad. It's just unbelievable response. So my Rick, I would say that please support this cause. Go to vhp-america.org and donate whatever amount of money you can donate. I I think let me see if I can let me bring up that slide. So see if I can. I just did a hide on that, and so let me show that again. I I think I inadvertently hit the window with the PowerPoint. But I mean everyone knows what we're trying to say here. The other thing I would say is that this is a cause that it's not been the amazing mandirs in America, and people have a chance to go there. I would highly recommend that they go and see these mandirs because it is it's just an amazing experience. I was on this yatra for about 17, 18 days. Amitabh Mittal is there for entire yatra. Tejal Ben Shah from BHPA was there for 15 days. And so multiple people have been part of this yatra. And I think it's an unforgettable experience. that people have, that I really hope that uh, and if you get a chance to go to this go on this in America, please do visit, because it's an experience like no other. In America, is some beautiful wonders, and more are coming up. Okay, with that, I go to the next one, which is the Hindu good news of the week. So this is my favorite topic. I was fortunate enough to go to Cambodia after the World Hindu Congress meeting in Thailand, and there's so many Hindu artifacts with Angkor Wat and everything else. But the saddest thing about it is a lot of these murtis, a lot of the murtis there have their head chopped off, or they're completely missing. There'll be a platform there on which they put the murti. The actual murti is missing.
Missing.
And this is by the tens of thousands. The most beautiful murtis that you can imagine are just beheaded or completely missing. And that is because some of the greedy locals working with the international smugglers have stolen these murtis and have sold it to individual art collectors, or to the museums.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, these were areas of conflict. The French colonization and then the internal civil wars there. It's only just recently that these areas like Cambodia, Laos, all of those countries have sort of settled down into a relative stability. And so it's hard to, we have also seen from India, murtis taken away and sold because it has value. These are unique items and it has value. I'm glad US has returned it to Cambodia. Hopefully we can visit it in a museum again.
I,
And
a lot of the the sad part is that there are murtis in India which are like hundreds, if not thousands of years old. People, they're actively being worshipped, and people go to the mandir in the morning and they see that the murti is gone. This happens even now.
yeah,
And just imagine, I mean, you have all your emotions tied to a particular murti because you have, for hundreds of years, people in your village have worshipped this murti.
mhm.
And especially it happens
Your
in South India,
Grama Devat, it's your Grama Devata. It's
yeah,
a protector of your village and your home and your own family. It's a tragedy. It's a
yeah.
real
To
tragedy.
lose that kind of a center of your spiritual life,
Mhm.
I think in last 5 years or 6 years, a lot of these murtis are being returned,
Mhm.
but literally tens of thousands, if not more, have been stolen. So no matter how much the return is, it's
Fraction of what's lost,
not
right?
even I mean, it's just drop in the bucket, not even a
Micro
drop in the
fraction.
bucket.
It's small fraction. Yeah.
Yeah, really small fraction.
Sad. Very, very sad.
Yeah, and then all right, the most anticipated segment of our show is the who is going to be the Hindu hater of the week.
Oh my
So
God.
here we go. The Hindu hater of the week this week is
Phew,
uh,
Pakistan.
and it should not come as a surprise to anyone, but another ancient Hindu mandir. I mean, look at the state of this mandir. This is an ancient mandir. It is completely destroyed because they want to build a shopping mall. I mean, your heart just goes out from
Breaks when
pain,
you see this. Yeah.
this is hundreds of years old mandir, and it is being completely demolished and brick by brick. Now,
But it
on
seems like it was the people who are destroying it are not getting permission from the government or anything because some of the government officials said, oh, this is terrible. We did not know. But
it's very
flawless
interesting.
land. Yeah.
And it's very interesting because on one hand they're saying that, oh, we didn't really know what happened, but some other news items say that they were the government officials were kind of, some of the government officials, I don't know how many and who, were complicit in this because
It
at a
has to
local
be.
level they may be getting some financial benefit out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is extremely sad because they're losing an entire heritage. I mean, I just don't understand. People come to India, visiting India to see the great temples. They come to experience that. I mean, they go to Pakistan and experience what? I don't
A
know.
shopping mall which is built on top of a
Yeah.
mountain. And the sad part is, look, I mean, there are at least 3,000, and some people say 50,000, and there's a full documentation of this, of mosques in India that were built on top of Hindu mandirs that were
Yes.
destroyed.
Yeah.
And to
Mhm.
claim every mandir, and we claimed only one Ram Mandir, Ram at the birthplace of Bhagwan Ram, but
Yeah.
every one of these mandirs is a 30-year, 40-year, 50-year, in case of Ram
Legal.
Mandir, 150-year lawsuit.
Yeah.
And and these are all fully documented at one time mandirs.
Yeah.
These are actual mandirs that are just being broken into.
Yeah.
And I think at some point, so unless you really have hate for Hindus, you would not indulge in an act like this.
It would not. And I can only say this as a practicing Hindu Ajay. I feel that when a temple is destroyed like this, there is always a lot of negative energy that goes with it. Hmm?
Yeah.
Even if there is a temple left alone, not really worshipped at, there is an energy around it. Okay. And when it is worshipped, the energy affects all people, not just Hindus,
Yeah.
in a positive way. When it is destroyed, I am very, very sure the negative energies will really impact Pakistan and its downfall and its decline, which is sad for its people, but they are bringing it down themselves.
Well, thanks, Sudhir. With this, we are at the end of our program. And any final comments before we close?
No, very important topic that we discussed today. I again urge all parents, please reach out to your college student kids, high school students, and let them know to be careful where they are and make wise choices. Because a wrong choice means a whole life is gone. Please
Yeah.
don't let that happen to you or your child.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective. It is an initiative of World Hindu Council of America, VHPA, and we come live every week. So please tune in, and if you miss us, visit us on our website or HinduLounge.com or to VHPA videos on YouTube. Okay, with that, thank you, Sudha, and namaste, everyone. We'll see you next
Namaste.
week.
Thank you.
Namaste.